Well, hello everybody, and yes, the corona things are a little bit odd. That's going on with the whole infection thing, but I believe everything's gonna be okay on that one. Especially with some of the new things that they found out, especially that one drug that they used for malaria, which I'm not too worried about because I can't get malaria because I'm type O blood or type 0 blood, and they can't get malaria, or anybody who has O can't get malaria because you don't have the sugar enzymes. That's why it's type 0. It's not actually supposed to be type O, but that's because some doctor made a mistake and looked at it and thought it was an O instead of a 0. So, that's why we have type O. Anyways, let's get into this Bible psychology thing that I did. So, I'm going over Genesis 1:1 to 1:2, and really it's the whole Genesis thing. This is the creation, an introduction to Divine Sophia and Tiamat. Let me talk a little bit about Genesis. Genesis, you can look at it at several ways. You can look at it as in, like, the creation story. And a day in Genesis is not one single 24-hour day. The actual word in Hebrew actually means an indefinite amount of period. Like, there is no time limit. So it's more like, I would say, eras. Long periods of time, possibly. The other way that you can look at it is from Chan Thomas's perspective from the Adam and Eve story, where he talks about that Adam and Eve came from a civilization, most likely what we would probably call Atlantis. In there, he actually goes into detail about how Eve was not Adam's wife, but it was his daughter, and which really makes the story weird. But going back to that is that happened about 12,000 years ago, when the last ice age ended. And it felt like, from what the story was going on and the way how he discovered it and things of that nature. I mean, I suggest that everybody read it. You can have somebody read it to you for free on YouTube if you want to. But it's a very, very interesting story, the way how he brings it up. And this is a book that the CIA censored for like many, many, many years. But he kind of goes into the story about how somewhere between every 5,000 to 7,000 years, like, some kind of cataclysm happens on the earth. I very much predict that the next one that's going to happen is going to be the year 4163. And technically, no, that does not come from me. That comes from Nostradamus. Some estimated time around there, but where is it? But he kind of goes on about how the first those 7 days were actually how long it takes the Earth to readjust itself from some kind of cataclysm. It takes about 7 days for all the chaos to settle, and then there's also. And then the story of Noah was a different cataclysm. And the reason why there's not more detailed information about that is because he kind of goes through how the information got lost in some of the wars that the Israelites fought, especially with Babylon. So now that I've kind of given that introduction, as in the different ways in which you can interpret Genesis, and there's many ways in which you can interpret it. There's also there's a mathematical way, because Hebrew is written in mathematical form. So This is more psychological. Now, in the description box, you are going to see two things. You will see the Genesis 1:1, the actual verses in 4 different languages. And then you're going to see this diagram that's going to have the beginning at the top, God at the bottom, and then arrows pointing out. Now this is a very, very interesting thing right here. Because it talks about in a way, the first sentence in the Bible has 4 nouns, which could also be denoted as like earth, air, fire, and water. The number 4 is really important because it means foundation. It is what you build upon. It's order. It's out of chaos. And the way how it was drawn to do that, you have the cross and everything like that, but it's also in a perfect way. You can easily draw a circle around the whole thing, and out of that circle you could see something like the shape of the pyramids. And the pyramids actually are kind of in a foundation. It's actually, I think it's a square, not a circle. It could be a circle. But anyways, like, one of the meanings of that is the earth inside the universe. So it is of creation. So, hold on, I'm losing my... Okay, so the first sentence has 4 nouns. Okay, and like I was saying, pre-Socratic philosophers, they... that the first step of differentiation of the prima materia into 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. The Greek word for prima materia is, and I don't know if I'm saying this right in Greek, but archē, and you actually see it right up there in the Greek version, archē. And in Hebrew, it's Bereshith. It's not the Bereshith that brings in the in the beginning part that the Bible, does it. But now let's delve into this word Bereshith. Okay, so Bereshith, and I may be pronouncing that wrong too. So, is Hebrew, and in the Bible, it's translated as "in the beginning." But a lot of people, other people, believe that it should be translated as "in wisdom," and that would make a case for the feminine aspect, the divine wisdom, Sophia, Divine Sophia. So if you take it in that sense, you could rewrite that word as in Sophia, God created the heavens, the heaven and the earth. And that would make more sense, because that would mean that God would go through Sophia to create the heavens and the earth. It gives a little bit more, it brings that more like feminine masculine, like it was the feminine spirit that basically gave the life, whereas the Father was the seed. So it kind of gives, to me, it makes more sense. And it could probably be translated, because it's also in the beginning in a way, because it's, the birth of the heavens and the earth. So, and keep that term, that name, Sophia, keep that in your head, because we are going to be going through that. Like, Sophia is going to be popping up a lot in a lot of these readings, because one of the main things that this is teaching is that the feminine quality has been suppressed throughout history. It's we are a masculine society, and I don't think that we don't need to be a feminine society. We need to be a come together society. So the feminine aspect in this world is suppressed. And it's that nature, that care, that giving, but there's also an evil side to the feminine aspect, and it's the side that we kind of got to watch out for too, because it can be overreacting, and it can cause a lot of freaking damage. But we will get into more of those aspects later. Right now, this is talking about the beginning, when I was talking about the prima materia and the rosarium pictures, that reflects this image right here that I'm talking about. I'm trying to show how everything relates and comes together. So moving on, we got the term, and this is down below too, the term deep in Genesis chapter 1 verse 2. We have the deep translates as tehom, and formless void translates as tohu wa bohu. I'm assuming, I don't know. But tehom is derived and symbolically linked with Tiamat. And Tiamat is important because it relates to the first story that I tell. So understanding Tiamat will help you understand the beginning of my first novel that's going to be coming out. And I would say that when you think about Tiamat, you can think about some of the Sumerian gods and things of that nature too. And it's interesting, see, this is not something that I'm pointing out. This is actually something that Carl Jung pointed out. And the main reason why it is interlinked and interconnected and a big reference is that Abraham was from Ur. And Ur was a Sumerian city-state. So he definitely understood, and he knew about the Sumerian deities. And he knew about the way how they calculated their math with sexagesmal and all this other stuff. Because you see that reflection in the Hebrew language. Because the Hebrew language is mathematical. Well, actually, back then, I would probably say a lot of the language were mathematical. But it all stemmed, most of it stemmed from there. And the Sumerian language, from what I recall from studying languages, that it is not connected. It's like the Sumerians came from somewhere else. The Sumerians are intriguing because they actually came from somewhere else, and they just took people as slaves and built a civilization. That's really your foundation for civilization. Is I'm going to come in, conquer you, and you slave for me. And it's kind of reflected, you know. So, okay, and all this is, so, in Tiamat, it's the reference to the Sumerian creation story. You know, knowing the Sumerian creation story and the Epic of Gilgamesh are two very important ancient literatures that I suggest everyone read, get to be familiar with, or research them on YouTube. There's some good channels that go over that quite well. If you need suggestions, then just ask. Tiamat, and this is also, I've taken 2 classes of astrophysics, and according to all that, okay, first I'm going to give the, our side, the scientific view of how our moon was created, and that was that a Mars-like object collided with the Earth, and out of that, it kind of looked like the rings of Saturn at first, but they slowly pieced themselves together and formed our moon. So, in essence, the story, the Sumerian creation story, talks about Tiamat. And Tiamat was just a planet that was full of water. And there was this struggle that was going on with this other planet, or maybe star system. I think it's Nibiru or Niburi, something like that. But as it was coming around, because it has a different orbit, it was basically on a collision course with Tiamat. And Tiamat at this time was a lot bigger. It was not like the Earth as today, because this is the planet where Earth came out. But anyways, one of its moons collided with Tiamat and broke it apart. Mars went backward, Earth, the new Earth, went forward. And the leftover pieces from Tiamat, or the Earth, however you want to say it, became the hammered out bracelet, or our asteroid belt. Okay. It's a pretty interesting story, and I suggest you read it. But it's pretty interesting because in that portion where it talks about that, it kind of summarizes that whole thing up right there in the Bible. Okay, so where's my notes? There we go. Okay, So the formless, the deep, or tehom, and the formless void are both synonyms for the prima materia. And all this is important to pay attention to your dreams, because in your dreams, every increase in consciousness and light derives from a creative encounter with darkness, the abyss, chaos. This brings about a threatened darkening of the ego, but the law of opposites is then activated, and the compensating wind of the spirit rushes in, and the spirit fertilizes the darkness, and a new light is born, a new consciousness is created. My cat is going crazy, if you can hear my cat in the background, and it has nothing to do. Let me let him in. Pause! Come here. Oh, he just does that when he feels like he is alone. So, it's, okay. So, there's a lot of detail in the opposites, because every single time that you love, you bring in hate. Every single time there's light, there is darkness, and all that. And yeah. And, yeah, Paws can say, hi, watch your claws. Say hi, Paws. Look at the camera. Yay, it's all Paws. Okay, how are you doing, boy? You doing a lot better? Okay. So, he is okay now. Other than that, I'm going to leave it here today. Next, I'm going to be getting into, the next time I do one of these, it's going to be about Adam and Eve. We're going to continue on the story there. Adam and Eve is next. I'm going to be going over basically almost every single book in the Old Testament. And this is just at the beginning, and the beginning is somewhat hard because it brings us back to birth. And not a lot of us kind of remember those times, and so you're trying to kind of dig up that whole thing. And so the closer I get to the New Testament, the more things will become familiar, and the more you meditate on the beginning issues, the more you will start to realize certain things. You'll be able to go into that pool, that water of creation, the birth. But until then, I hope everyone is doing great. Stay positive. Don't panic too much. I'm sure that we're going to make it through this coronavirus thing. Just follow what everybody else has basically been saying. Wash your hands, stay your distance away, stay home if you can. And you'll be safe. Other than that, everybody have a good one. Peace and bye.